Good evening, everyone. I'm Avinav Shukla, Senior Student Editor at Just Corpus Law Journal, and the host of today's session. I welcome you all on Masterclass on Unpacking Sports Law, Opportunities and Future Perspective, which is being conducted with Doctrina Ludus. Before we delve into today's discussion, let me provide a brief introduction of the Just Corpus, Doctrina Ludus, and the eminent guest speakers of the day, Mr. Tarun sir and Mr. Deep Ray sir. Just Corpus is a body of legal professionals who have come together to bring various aspects and chains of law under a single umbrella. Just Corpus, an edtech platform set up in 2020, has a wide reach of 600,000 clicks per month on an average basis on our website www.justcorpus.com. The inspiration was derived from the ever-growing need for law students. Just Corpus has also incorporated an interdisciplinary journal and a multidisciplinary journal as its subsidiaries, named as Just Corpus Law Journal and International Journal of Law, Research, Education and Social Sciences. Doctrina Ludus is a movement aimed at promoting sports and sports law education by recognizing the immense significance of sports in society and the legal framework governing it. Doctrina Ludus strives to bridge the gap between sports enthusiasts, legal professionals, and aspiring students through comprehensive educational programs and engaging activities. This groundbreaking initiative serves as a catalyst for fostering a deeper understanding of multifaceted world of sports and its legal complexities. Now, turning our attention to today's focal point, we are privileged to have with us today Mr. Tarun Sir, faculty, Gujarat National Law University and co-founder Doctrina Ludus, and Mr. Deep Ray, Sir, founder Sensito Legal and co-founder Doctrina Ludus, as an esteemed guest speakers of the day. I, on behalf of all the participants and organizing team, welcome both the speakers. Mr. Tarun sir is an accomplished sports law academic who plays a vital role as the co-founder of Doctrina Ludus. With a dynamic career spanning over 8 years, he serves as an assistant professor research at the Gujarat National Law University in Gandhinagar, India. Sir's expertise lies in sports law research, teaching, and consultancy. Recognized for his expertise, he has been invited to deliver 8 courses and over 30 plus webinars and guest lectures at esteemed institutions such as AISTS India, Jindal Global Law School, Kathmandu University School of Law, Symbiosis Law School, Hyderabad and Mumbai University, to name a few. As a speaker and panelist, he has participated in the renowned ISLJ Conference at Asser Instituut, Netherlands, and the Sports Law and Policy Center Symposium in Bengaluru. I welcome you, sir. Mr. Deep Racer is an international sports lawyer with over 9 years of experience. He's a partner at Sensito Legal. Sir provides legal advice to athletes, clubs, agents, federations, sports management firms from around the world on matters pertaining to inter alia labor issues, player transfers, disciplinary matters, match fixing, anti-doping, to name a few. He has wide experience in representing parties before adjudicatory bodies of national sports associations, FIFA, and the Court of Arbitration for Sports. On the academic front, Sir has delivered guest lectures and conducted webinars at prestigious universities such as Jindal Global Law School, Symbiosis Law School, Kathmandu University, Gujarat National Law University, to name a few. Additionally, Sir is frequently invited as a panel member at sports law conferences and has also acted as a judge at international moot court competitions. I welcome you, sir. With this, I hand
Thank
over
you.
the
Thank you,
floor.
Abhinav.
With this, I hand over the floor to our esteemed speakers, and once again, I welcome them to this seminar.
Uh, Thank you, Abhinav, for that kind introduction. It's a matter of immense honor. It's very noble for both Deep and I, because I don't know about Deep, but we were discussing this. We haven't done a live YouTube session ever. At least I haven't. Deep, I think the same goes for you. We haven't done a live YouTube session before. Uh, and while you were speaking and introducing us, Abhinav, I just thought of opening the YouTube channel as well to keep a track of questions. So just figuring out how these things are going to work. It's extremely good. To club with Just Corpus for this lecture. And what a great start to the new year. First of all, happy new year to everyone. Deep, I think before I introduce what the session is going to be, maybe some opening remarks from you.
No, it's a pleasure to collaborate with Just Corpus, and again, yeah, looking forward to the session. As Tarun has pointed out, this is also, I mean, although we do deliver lectures at several universities and conduct webinars and workshops and so and so, but this is a new experience for us. So I hope it goes well, and yeah, looking forward to the session.
Right. Thanks, Deep. So essentially, what we've tried to do today is that we're not going to keep this session as like a lecture. Maybe it will fall between a lecture, a discussion, a podcast, where we, of course, have PPTs, and we've got various areas that we are going to cover today, contemporary areas, because a lot has happened in the past 2, 3 years, and specifically the past 2, 3 months when it comes to Indian sports law. Whether it's about India's intent to host the 2036 Olympics, whether it's about whatever happened at the recent Olympics with Vinesh Fogart and so on and so forth. And, how could we miss, when we're talking about sports law, how can we miss cricket and the recent Border-Gavaskar Trophy and whatever happened? We're not going to talk about the performance because we are not an expert in playing cricket, but we have a basic understanding as to how it should be governed, and the issues that happened there, specifically the Kohli Constas conspiracy. All the Kohli fans who have joined us, feel free to share your views on it. But we will also look at it and analyze it from a sports law angle.
I will.
And this is essentially what we'll do today. Please, Deep, you had
I'll
something
have
to
to
add.
disagree with you there, Tarun. I mean, we are any Indian person is a cricket expert. So I
That's,
am an expert.
I was
Speak for
saying not even
yourself when
expert
you say that
playing
you're not
cricket,
expert.
from the
No, no,
performance. That's
yeah.
also true.
Even we are great. We understand batting technique, and we know
That's
what Kohli is doing wrong. For instance, we all know. Uh,
okay.
but so yeah, I'm an expert. You may not.
Okay, okay. In this case, I think Deep is speaking for himself. I'm not, but great. And I think the place where Deep comes from, I think Deep, you can give a lot of football examples. You hail from Calcutta, and I think Kolkata has a great football environment going. And I've been told that the amount of goals that Messi and Ronaldo have scored in their careers, it's into 10 in Kolkata, because a lot of people have their own perceptions about how football is governed all around the globe. I think so. Those inputs are very important when we'll have a discussion. For our viewers, I think this is essentially what we're going to cover today. We'll understand sports law as an entity. I think there are various things people have about, notions people have about it. We'll try to sort out these notions and what it essentially looks into. We're going to talk about the Indian governance, sports law governance, and we've got a couple of case studies, very important, which I think needs to be discussed. We'll talk about the very recent draft national sports governance bill that has come in, which a lot of people say is the new era for Indian sports governance. There are some brilliant steps taken, and I think we're going to discuss that. And we'll also discuss what can be the challenges even after the bill has been introduced. Uh, Another very important aspect that we want to discuss is India ready for the Olympics, to host it? Because we are looking at 2036. Seems like a lot of time, because it's 11 years from today. But, when it comes to sports governance and building stadiums and building a kind of sophisticated environment, I don't think so. 11 years is a lot of time. Then we are going to look at the Border-Gavaskar Trophy and whatever happened there from a legal and policy angle, specifically the Virat Kohli and the Constas I would say altercation or discussion or whatever they however you want to put it. And then one of the most important things, something that a lot of people who want to be a part of sports law ecosystem ask us through our courses whenever we are teaching in through Doctrina Ludus, which is an initiative that Deep and I have the honor to run, or wherever we meet students and even people who are into practice but want to have a sports law practice as well. We will try to give an academic and most importantly a practical angle to it when it comes to opportunities and internships. I have opened my YouTube as well, so if any question comes in, I think I'll just keep on checking it. And please feel free to ask us whatever you want to. It will be great that if you keep your discussion and your questions related to what we have to discuss today. But feel free if you have any other question which we might not be covering today. We are more than happy to take it. Uh, I think we'll quickly, start the presentation. And before we discuss what essentially sports law is, it's very important to understand sports as an entity. And the number of definitions that have been given about what sports is. And one of my favorite comes out of two uh, eminent personalities in the area of Indian sports law, which comes from Justice Mukul Mudgal and Vidushpat Singhania, two very, very important names whenever you talk about Indian sports law. And they gave this particular definition of how you define sports. And why this definition is important, ladies and gentlemen, is because it has legal spin to it, right? What they've said that sports is a non scripted activity. Now, anything that becomes scripted essentially falls within the category of match fixing and sport fixing. And whenever Deep and I teach sports law, I think one case that comes to our mind, specifically because we are in India and we are talking about cricket, will be the case of Muhammad Amir, Muhammad Asif, and Salman Butt. Deep, anything that you want to add to that? I think it's one of the only cases that reached to the Code of Arbitration for sport.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah,
This was back in 2010, if I'm not wrong,
yeah,
2010 or 11. But of
11.
course, there have been other. Yes, so this is one of the few cases that went all the way to CAS. So, if for those who are not aware, CAS is the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which is a tribunal, sports law tribunal based out in Switzerland. And any decision passed by a sports federation, an international sports federation, whether that be FIFA or the International Cricket Council, the ICC, can be challenged before the Court of Arbitration for Sport. So when these cricket players, I'm sure the cricket fans would remember Mohammad Asif and Salman Butt and Mohammad Amir, of course, is still an active cricket player, although he does not. I don't think he gets selected for the national team all that much any longer, but still he's around. So this is one of the few matters which had gone to CAS. CAS, of course, did not overturn the decision of the ICC, and these players were penalized. If I remember correctly, Salman Butt was imposed a life ban,
Yeah,
and Mohammad Amir was suspended. Mohammad Asif was suspended for 10 years, and Mohammad Amir, who was, I think, around 18 years old at that point, was suspended for 5 years. Having said that, I mean, while this is the only matter which reached cast, of course, this is not the only instance of match fixing in cricket. Of course,
absolutely.
maybe in the comment section, some of you can uh, type out other match fixing matters in cricket that you may be aware of.
Right. Or maybe matters of corrupt practices in cricket. I think while the Border-Gavaskar Trophy was going on, I think in the Sydney Test, which was the last test on the Boxing Day, even Virat Kohli showed his empty pockets to the stadium, which was kind of the sandpaper. I would say incident that happened way back where Steve Smith was involved, just to mock and tell that we are not into these things. So all these examples, whoever whenever those examples come to you, please feel free to put it on the chat box. We'll be more than happy to take it. I think somebody has spoken about the CSK case. the Chennai Super King case, great example from the Indian Premier League, which is again about spot fixing. There's the Rajasthan Royals case as well, where Srishant and there were two other players involved who had to face the brunt of it. So that's very very important to understand that sports is a non-scripted activity. The second thing they said that it involves human beings. You can have equestrian sport like horse racing, steeplechase, so on and so forth. But you need to have a human being who will be a jockey in this case. You can have water sport where you have these rafts and so on and so forth. But human beings will be an essential part of it. Another very important aspect to sports is the mental and physical exertion. If you look at the traditional definition of sports, ladies and gentlemen, there was a lot of focus on only physical exertion. And then a question came in, I think, and we would love to hear everybody's view on it. If that's the case, if only physical exertion is something that's going to define sport, will you consider chess as a sport? Or will chess be just a recreational activity? Another very important, sport which I think is followed all around the globe is Formula One. Will you consider that as a sport? Because Formula One, a lot of people think is more about the car than the driver, and that's why you see Red Bull or Mercedes winning it. But would love to hear everybody's views on that. I think I'll keep on checking the chat. Wherever whatever people feel about it. Is chess a sport or not, or is Formula One a sport or not? Deep, what are your thoughts on it? What generally do you hear from people in the sports community
I mean, regarding chess,
regarding chess? Let's start with chess, maybe.
chess, of course. I mean, I love chess, although I'm not all that good at it. But I mean, with all due respect, I don't think chess could be considered to be a sport. It is a game.
Right.
Um, yeah, it does not really fulfill. Again, I mean, it's a great game, and we are very proud of our chess players hailing from India. But then I don't think it could be considered to be a sport.
And what's your take on Formula One, Deep? How do you see Formula One?
Formula One, I would say yes, it is. It is a sport. Although of course, cars play a very important role in that, but it is the whole. I mean, physical exertion. I'm not saying that should be the only factor, but
Right.
then I mean, Formula One, there is plenty of physical exertion. You're
That's
not
true.
sitting there and driving those cars. If you look at the routines, the regimes that these drivers follow, it is, I mean, they work as much as most other athletes. I don't
Absolutely.
feel that I think cricket players have it easier. They train less as compared to Formula One drivers.
Yeah,
So
that's actually true. If you look at this, and this is for everyone who follows Formula One, there's a brilliant series on Netflix called Formula One Drive to Survive. If you haven't watched it, everybody should watch it, and you should check the training schedule of these particular drivers, which Deep is just talking about. I had a great opportunity to meet Abhinav Bindra in one of these conferences that I went to, and we had a discussion. He was free, and I got some 10 minutes with him, and I was just talking about that. Sir, a number of times people say that even shooting as a entity is not considered to be a sport because it's more about mental balance and just putting out a target. And then he told me his exercise regime, and it was absolutely equivalent to what maybe Sunil Chetri might be doing, or Virat Kohli might be doing, or Smriti Mandana might be doing. And I was just taken aback. I thought, and he was like, you can't concentrate to that extent if you don't have that kind of physical fitness. And that's very very important to understand when you consider anything, when it comes to when you want to call something as a sport. Another important aspect in this definition is achieving a specific aim. That could be a World Cup. I think tomorrow we have, if there are football fans, tomorrow we have a El Clasico coming in, which is between Barcelona and Real Madrid, and you can see the Real Madrid flag behind me. I'm a major Real Madrid. Any Real Madrid fans here? A huge shout out to all of you on YouTube. We've got a game coming up in the Super Copa final. So, you have that kind of aim in sport. Then, another important aspect is the supervision of a pre assigned person when it comes to sport. And that can be a referee. And while you're training, that can be a coach. Very, very important to have. And in the world of sport, you don't only regulate athletes, but I think because Deep works with a lot of these teams in football and in various other sports, uh, any kind of regulation associated to a referee or any kind of regulation associated to the support staff is equally important. Deep, any matter which you might have an opportunity to work with where referees or support staff was involved at in football or any other sport?
I mean, there are some matters I've been involved in, but one matter which I remember very clearly, which I was not a part of, but of course I've read about it. One of my colleagues, he was representing the referee. I don't know how many football fans we have in the house, but I think it was 3 or 4 years back during a Champions League match involving Istanbul. Was it Galatasaray or one of the Turkish clubs? A referee was accused of making racist comments against
Right.
a particular player. And of course, all hell broke loose, and there was a proceeding against the referee. The players, I think, had walked out of the field, alleging the referee had made some racist comments, and there was a disciplinary hearing conducted by UEFA.
Right.
Uh, I think the final decision was that the referee was not considered to be guilty of using of making racial comment. But yeah, so these things do happen, and even in India there have been similar cases. And the referee is also not beyond the rules, right?
Right.
Uh,
Anything on support staff, Deep? I think those are matters which come rarely, but in doping matters, we've seen where support staff has been, they've been held guilty for their conduct.
Right. So by support staff, I mean, if you mean an assistant coach or a fitness trainer, yeah, of course,
Absolutely.
absolutely. I mean, again, if we can use a football example, anyone who is on the bench can be cautioned with a yellow card or can even be sent off. So let's say someone is using abusive language, or is threatening a player or a match official, can be sanctioned.
Right.
So if you look at the regulations of uh, any uh, any sport for that matter, there will be certain provisions which deal with support staff,
Right.
officials.
Right.
That's usually the term that is used. And of course, these provisions lay down certain rules specifically regarding support staff.
Right. I think, and the role of support staff and how sophisticated they have to behave, I think, becomes even more important when there are minors playing sport, because they generally take care of them. And we've seen instances where minors don't know a lot of things because they've not been told how to train, what to consume, and we've seen instances where the support staff haven't. I would say behaved in the way they should have, while educating the minors and so on and so forth. We have seen coaches being a little problematic when it comes to behaviors, and when specifically when it comes to cases of sexual harassment. There are a number of case studies where we have seen coaches being held up because they were not behaving properly, specifically with female athletes and minors. So, number of case studies are there. I would urge everyone to, after this session, because we've got limited amount of time, we can't delve into all of these things. But please read about these cases which are there. And one of the sexual harassment case, which became a major sports governance issue in India, we're going to discuss that in a couple of slides. So, I think there we would love to hear your thoughts. Another important aspect is that sport will have predefined set of rules. So you've got the laws of cricket, the laws of football, any kind of book which has been any kind of regulation which has been made to regulate any sport. That's very necessary. And the most important aspect of, I think, this definition is something called public morality. That if you want an entity to qualify as sport, that has to cater to public morality, and public morality, I think, changes in every jurisdiction. In US it might be a little different, in European Union it might be a little different, but here I want to bring in two very important cases which touch upon the whole aspect of public morality in India when it comes to sport or any kind of activity which uh, people want it to be considered as sport. two very important cases I would want to just highlight here. One is the Dahi Handi case. I hope everybody who has joined us might know the Dahi Handi procession that happens when you have the when you have Janmashtami, where you have to make a human pyramid, and there's a dahi handi which is hanging up there. You have to climb the human pyramid, break the dahi handi, and whichever group does it first, there are prizes involved. It's considered to be a beautiful cultural sporting event. But for everybody's information, this kind of matter has reached to the Bombay High Court, where because of Dahi Handi, there were a lot of incidents of minor getting injured, people dying, and so on and so forth. And people were of the opinion, I would say, child rights activists were of the opinion that such processions should not involve minors, and that is something that reached the Bombay High Court in 2014, where Bombay High Court made two very essential rules associated to Dahi Handi. One is that nobody under the age of 18 will be a part of the procession, and two, that the pyramid that will be made in the procession cannot be more than 20 feet high. Whenever you get an opportunity, please read the details of this case. It's called the Dahi Handi case, Bombay High Court judgment 2014. The exact citation, I think I'll share it in the slide itself, and you can check it later. And another very important thing why this case is important, because I have seen it in front of me. There was a friend of mine who was, we were minors at that point of time, who was this part of this procession, and he unfortunately fell from this pyramid, and he was bedridden for 10 months. This is something that I've seen myself. So very important to read this case from a public morality perspective. And when it comes to public morality, you've got Article 21, of course, and then you also have in such a scenario something called Article 39E under DPSP, where it's the responsibility of the state to protect child, women, and other vulnerable groups. So read about the Dahi Handi case. Deep, anything that you want to discuss maybe about the Jallikattu case, which is also, falls within the category of public morality?
Right. Does anyone know what Jallikattu is?
Yeah, Jallikattu. I think if you can put it on the chat, Jallikattu, anybody. I'll keep on tracking. I think there's a great discussion going on chess and Formula One right now on the chat box, which is great. But anybody who knows about the Jallikattu case and watch Jallikattu, anybody coming from the southern regions of
Someone has
India?
actually asked Jallikattu sports will also be covered under sports law. No, I mean,
Yeah,
That's the whole point. I mean, Jallikattu or bullfighting, these are not really considered to be sports because, of course, the idea is that it does not conform with public morality. I mean, of course, it's a topic of debate. But I mean, for instance, a lot of my Spanish friends, I mean, for instance, bullfighting is something which I did not enjoy all that much. I'd gone to the stadium to watch bullfighting once. I did not enjoy it all that much, but I mean, I saw that people do really have a good time, and they also argue that it's an integral part of their culture. I have not seen Jallikattu live ever in my life, but that they make similar arguments. Whenever there is a question regarding banning it, I think similar arguments are made, even in Spain, because again, I'm sure everyone is aware of the bullfighting culture that exists, at least in some parts of Spain.
right.
So it has been banned in Catalonia. Catalonia, where Barcelona is located, but in the south of Spain, for instance, bullfighting is still prevalent.
And do they consider bullfighting deep as a sport in Spain, or is it again a traditional event?
I don't think it's considered to be a sport by the Olympic Association.
Right.
It's an event. It's more of an
Right.
event. Yeah.
Right. I think somebody on the chat box, Krishna Rastogi, I think has already put the name of the case, and that's absolutely correct, Krishna. Thank you for sharing it with us. It's the Animal Welfare Board of India versus A. Nagraj, where
Right.
the court said that it's violation of the Prevention of Cruelty on Animals Act, and also the Fundamental Duty 51 AG, where you have to respect animals, show compassion towards them and the environment. And it's very important, from an Indian perspective, to make sure that anything that you want to put in this segment of sport, uh, comes and clears the radar of public morality. And that's the reason why even things which might not be directly associated with sports, let's take an example of online gambling, online gaming even. Initially when esports started coming in, people had major reservations about it because people said it's against public morality. Online gaming, again, public morality issue. But I think now the dimension is changing now, through a number of legislations, number of consultation groups, and so on and so forth. I think the whole definition of public morality in Indian sport is changing. So we might have a lot of things coming in the future, which might not be considered under the garb of public morality, but might be acceptable in the coming future, right? I think with this definition, we get a little bit of clarity as to what sports law will cover under it. And we'll quickly show you a list of few things that are there when it comes to sports law. It essentially covers sports governance, it covers contracts, gender issues in sports, integrity issues, what Deep and I mentioned in the previous slide regarding fixing, doping, and corruption. In the chat box, we had somebody talking about IPR and tech and data. Very, very important, a contemporary issue in the world of sports, and it is covered under sports law as well. Dispute resolution, Deep gave you an idea as to what the code of arbitration for sport is. We'll have a bit of discussion on this slide as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you've got esports and data in sports coming in. And, I want to bring in Deep here. Deep, I think contracts is something that is taught to every student in the first year. And you've been somebody who's been working in this area for almost 10 years now. How do you see sports contract? What are these major clauses which one should keep in mind? What's been your experience with the athletes?
Right. Yeah, it's been more than 10 years, Tarun. I think I
Yeah,
need
more
to
than.
amend my bio. They were saying that it's been more than 9 years. I just realized I've been working for more than 10 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so contracts, look, whenever I tell someone that I work as a sports lawyer, they are like, oh, so what do you do? Do you draft contracts? So it seems like one part of, I mean, I feel like not many people are aware of what a sports lawyer does, but this is one aspect which they are somewhat aware of. Now, it is indeed true that we do deal with contracts. Of course, I mean, it's maybe 30 to 40% of what I do. But we do deal with contracts because, of course, sports is largely it's a commercial activity. So, of course, there are a lot of contracts which need to be signed between all the players involved, right? And by players, I don't mean athletes, the parties involved rather. So we do see different types of contracts in sports, starting with your basic player contract or employment contract, okay, uh, whatever you wish to call it, which is essentially a contract governing the relationship between a club or a franchise or a national federation and an athlete. Then you have um, sponsorship agreements, broadcasting agreements. I'm sure most of you would have some idea regarding what sponsorship and broadcasting is. Um, so, by way of example, let's say I think the IPL, the principal sponsor of the IPL is Geo currently, no? Is it
Right.
Tata or Geo? I think it was Tata earlier, now it's Geo. So that is, of course, a contract was signed between the governing committee of the IPL and Geo, right? And then you have endorsement contracts as well. Endorsement contracts are the contracts that athletes sign with brands to endorse their products, essentially. Okay, a popular example could be I don't know, recent example of an athlete endorsing a brand. Uh,
I think Adidas and all, a lot of athletes get signed up. I think Jordan's is a huge example.
yeah, of course, that's a classic one. I mean, Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods and the contract that they signed with Nike. These are, oh, like I'm trying to think of a recent endorsement deal which made the news. Without Kohli and Puma, I think would be an
Yeah,
example.
I think that is something that happened. I think that is also an old deal, but now they
Yeah,
continue doing it. Yeah.
right. Then, of course, you have when we look at football, you have transfer agreements or loan agreements, which are extremely important. Other than that, there are contracts that athletes sign with their agents. Plethora of contracts. I mean, it's any commercial deal or any commercial deal that you want to strike, there needs to be a contract in place. So, of course, contracts are extremely important in sports. I think we had conducted a workshop on sports contracts,
Yeah.
which last year, right?
Right. Drafting.
We should, yeah, contract drafting. We should probably conduct one more. The thing is, if you want to work as a sports lawyer, I mean, of course, you need to have some basic contract drafting skills.
Right.
Uh, that is fundamental.
Right. I think we'll come to the do's and don'ts as well, where we both Deep and I were making a list of things that one should take care of before entering the profession of as a sports lawyer, or anybody who wants to get into sports academics like I have. I think in knowing the general principles of law is very, very important. So, at least from an Indian perspective, if you want to be a part of the sports law ecosystem, sports contract and the whole contract as a subject is something that you should have a decent grip on. So if you're thinking to come into this industry, I think contract is something that's going to be essentially important. Another very important thing, I would say, in this area is doping and match fixing and our integrity issues. I think match fixing is something that we discussed in the previous slide. I want to take the discussion towards doping, which has been a problem since the initiation of sport. Uh, and you've got the World Anti-Doping Agency that takes care of the matter at the global level. You've got the National Anti-Doping Agency at the domestic level in India. And unfortunately, we've seen every now and then one or the other Indian athlete being sanctioned by the World Anti-Doping Agency or the National Anti-Doping Agency or the International Federation in the case of doping. And not only Indian athletes, you've got a number of celebrated in global athletes, names like Lance Armstrong. If anybody knows Lance Armstrong, one of the most celebrated
Write in the
athletes.
comments.
Absolutely. Please write in the comments if you know Lance Armstrong and the case Lance Armstrong had to face because of the doping issue. Uh, I think we would love to discuss that as well. Uh, Another very important angle, and I think that came on the chat as well, which was about gender issues in sports. And the US football, women's football case is a very, very good example, a contemporary example. I think this year or I think in 2024, the Norway men's football team said that they're not going to play any match if the women's sport or the women athletes who are their counterparts there are not equally paid. I think pay disparity in sport has been a critical point of debate. And the US women's football case in the US, I think, is a prime example. Please read it. Please, if you type these names like Megan Rappioni and all, you will get to understand what this case was all about. And on the chat box, I was just looking at somebody spoke about transgenders. I would say trans athletes and sport. That's a very contemporary topic. And there are a number of issues associated to it. I had the opportunity to do a basic research on it, and there is deliberation as to where to allow them to play. Should we have a separate category for them? And as the Indian sports community, we should be proud about the fact that Kerala as a state. Anybody who's from Kerala in the chat box, I think Kerala as a state has done some tremendous work. They I don't know if they did a second edition of it, but I remember reading about this that they had a separate trans gender sports meet in the state, which was funded and supported by the government of Kerala. I think kudos to them. Very, very important to support them. They're coming in the sport slowly and steadily, and we need to have some safeguards for them coming in. Intellectual property and sports. If you ever had an opportunity to work in the area of intellectual property and sport.
I mean, when it comes to trademarks and copyright, it's not all that different from what you see in other areas. But there's some areas which I'd say is a little more specific, and I'm going to club image rights with intellectual property. So I would advise all the attendees to read up on these concepts a little bit. I mean, one thing to all the attendees is that, of course, this is a very brief session and we are trying to introduce you to certain topics, but of course, it would not be possible for us to elaborate on each and every topic. So
Right.
from time, we will ask you to read up on certain areas. Whoever's interested, please do so and see if it's something that you find interesting, because we understand that some of you might not be very familiar with sports law at all. So yeah, going back to the topic. So one very interesting area is ambush marketing, okay, which I'd say is specific to sport. Of course, read up. Whoever's interested, do look at cases regarding ambush marketing. But generally speaking, it's a brand trying to benefit from by being showcased at a big event. Okay, I think it'll be easier to explain by way of an example. I'm sure everyone knows Usain Bolt. So Usain Bolt, this was I think back in 2012 London Olympics. He wins the 100 meters and he picks up his boots. He was wearing a pair of I think golden Puma boots. It's an iconic image. And a photographer, of course, like everyone took a photograph of him, right? It was huge winning the 100 meters. Um, so it was, I would argue, I don't remember if Puma was sued for this, but the interesting part is the official jersey sponsor or kit sponsor for the that version of the Olympics was, I think, Nike. But then someone like Usain Bolt picks up a pair of Puma boots after winning the 100 meters, which gives a lot of uh, uh, it gives a lot of I'd say attention to Puma as a brand, right? So again, I don't exactly remember if this was Puma was sued by Nike for this, but these are some tactics which are used by brands sometimes to sort of benefit from a very popular event like an Olympic or a World Cup, is in spite of the fact that they are not an official sponsor. Tarun, can you just think of any example
I
of
think,
marketing?
and somebody in the chat box also is talking about IPR and sports, that, if you can uh, maybe, briefly talk about it. Intellectual property, as Deep just mentioned, is a very important aspect of sports. When it comes, and ambush marketing, as Deep mentioned, is one of the areas. I think very smart move, and a very important and a very interesting image, if I remember correctly, is of Michael Jordan, where he was promoting the Jordans at that point of time. And I think in those Olympics, Reebok, if I remember correctly, was the sponsor for the jersey for the entire US contingent that was there. And Michael Jordan, they requested Michael Jordan to not put on any kind of uh, jersey which has Nike, because that's kind of a conflicting interest and so on and so forth. And he did something really smart. He said that, look, I'm going to promote my brand as well and what I wear. And he kept the US flag on, in a position so that the Reebok sign is not visible, and nobody could say anything about it, because the reason that he was putting on the American flag, and you can't ask any athlete to take down that flag whenever you're going on the podium. I think these kind of case studies are very, very important. And I think PV Sindhu, if I remember correctly, had major reservations about using her image, by a number of brands. And I think she reached out to the court also, asking the brands not to use her name and her image rights without her permission. So extremely, interesting area. I think there were a couple of questions
I think
on it.
someone's asking us to talk about IP in more detail. Look, I'll
I
tell
think
you
now we have
something.
covered it, because I got to thank you, sir, on it.
Have we?
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
I think Junak
Look, I'll tell you
Goswami.
something, Tarun. I think there's a bit of a misconception that people think that there's a lot of IP work in sports. I mean, that which is not true.
Okay.
Of course, there is some intellectual property related work. For instance, the counterfeit jerseys and all. You do get those kind of cases. But I think if someone is looking to work in the field of intellectual property, uh, you can't, I mean, it's difficult to only focus on IP if you want to work as a sports lawyer. That's what I'm
Right.
saying to you. I mean,
Right.
you have to do other things, and then maybe you may get some intellectual property related work. But I have heard a lot of students tell me that, oh, look, I'm really interested in intellectual property, which is why I want to work in the sports industry, which I don't think uh, is feasible. You're not going to get if your idea is to focus on intellectual property, then you focus on intellectual property and maybe you get some matters in the sports industry.
Yeah.
But then you're not really focused on sports. Okay.
Yeah.
And let's say you are focused on in the sports industry, you won't get those many intellectual property related matters. I mean, that cannot be the only area of practice.
Right. I think one question which came, I think Nitya Desai is somebody who's asked this question about Iman Khalif. I think Nitya, in this particular scenario, the Algerian boxer, I think she was given a clean chit by the IOC, by CAS, I'm sorry, because the matter immediately went to the board there. The Code of Arbitration for Sport had a seat there while the Olympics are going on. But I think then some news came in where people said, and the investigation was going on, that she actually belongs to the other gender. She's or I don't know how to say it, but she's not a woman but a male. But that is something which is still very controversial. I haven't had the opportunity to follow the case after that, but from an IOC perspective and CAS perspective, Iman Khalif got a clean chit, and that's why she could, she was a part of the women's boxing category.
Right.
After
From what
that,
I've
what
read,
happened, I don't know.
yeah. So from what I read regarding Iman Khalif, I'm not sure if
Yeah,
I'm
Iman.
pronouncing that correctly. I don't think there was any evidence of her being intersex as
Yeah,
compared to someone like Cassius Mania, who
that's right.
is an intersex person. There's no doubt regarding that, the fact that she has internal testes. Now, whether she should be allowed to compete with women or not, that's a different question altogether. But with Iman Khalif, it's just that people were saying that she looks masculine.
Yeah,
So I don't think, again, if there is any other evidence, that was only on social media, from what I understand.
that's true.
Right? But she
Because there
was
was some controversial report coming in that no,
right.
he's a man, and we
She
have
was
got some.
not allowed to compete in an event, but again, apparently there was no evidence. See, and tell you
Evidence.
what, I mean, what happens these days is there's so much politics regarding uh, gender issues. We we have forgotten how to be objective. So there's one group yelling that, oh, someone who's intersex or transgender should not be allowed to compete, or just they should be harassed or whatever it is. And there's one group who are claiming that no, if a man identifies as a woman, let him compete with women. I think both uh, camps are being a bit ridiculous, and we need to be a little objective and not like get carried away with our emotions. Of course,
Right.
when it comes to a transgender person, someone who identifies, or even a man who identifies as a woman, that person should be treated with respect. But when it comes to sports, it's slightly different, right? So I think people get a little confused. Maybe it's because of empathy, which is great. But then when it comes to sports and categories and such, we also need to be somewhat objective. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very difficult, right?
I
You
think
can't
it has
have
to be majorly based on scientific evidence, and I think science is also working on
really,
it. I think with the Castor
yeah,
Semenya case, the Duti Chand
right,
case, the whole hyperandrogenism issue that came in, I
exactly.
think it's still a little indefinitive, and science is working on it, and I think we will have answers in the near future. So let's see, let's be very positive about that. And I think that brings us to one of the most important aspects, Steve, which is dispute resolution and the code of arbitration for sport. You have a great run when it comes to representing athletes at CAS, at FIFA, DRC. What's been your experience, and would and maybe highlight maybe one issue which Indian athletes specifically face when it comes to reaching out to CAS or any of these sports tribunals?
Yeah. I'll try to keep it a bit brief. When I said
Absolutely.
earlier that maybe 30 to 40% of the work that I do is related to contracts, the other 60% is primarily dispute resolution.
Right.
So, just quickly, so when we talk about disputes, I mean, I think we could, of course, there are several different uh, divisions, maybe, but one part is disciplinary. Okay. So let's say what happened with between Virat Kohli and Sam Constance. I think we're going to discuss that later. That would
Right.
come under disciplinary. Or let's say someone gets a yellow card or a red card. That comes under disciplinary. And then you have contractual disputes. Okay. So let's say a football player has an employment contract with a club, and the contract is terminated by either party for whatsoever reason, maybe because of overdue pay bills, or perhaps because the player is not happy at the club, or he has a better offer somewhere else and he decides to go ahead with the offer. So those are contractual disputes. So there are, of course, a lot of different types of matters which come up. I think Vinesh Fogart's matter, that's all. That's not disciplinary. That's more regulatory, I'd say.
Right.
That would come again. So there's disciplinary, there's regulatory, and then there's contractual, right? So we work on all sorts of matters. Contractual matters, of course, are very common. And again, when we talk about dispute resolution, it's important to have some understanding regarding the tribunals that you can approach. Of course, litigation is an option, but perhaps not the best option. For athletes, again, feel free to write in the comments why you feel that litigation may not always be the best option for athletes, or if
Right.
you feel that it is the best option, feel free to mention that in the comment section. In most sports, you see, not most sports, but at least the more prominent ones like football or cricket, you'll see that the federations have, especially in football, cricket not so much perhaps, at least the contractual, at least there's no clear tribunal for contractual disputes. You see that FIFA has a tribunal, okay, and also domestic federations such as the All India Football Federation or the other federation in England, which is called the FA, or RFEF, the National Federation in Spain. They all have their separate tribunals where you can approach these tribunals in the event of a dispute between, let's say, a player and a club, or two clubs, or a coach in a club, a player and his agent, so on and so forth. Okay. And then at the very top of it, you have the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Now, I don't know if it's an accurate way to describe the Court of Arbitration for Sport, but some people refer to it as the Supreme Court of Sports Law.
That's right.
Yeah. So what the CAS does is, CAS is an arbitral tribunal, so it has original jurisdiction. So those of you who have students who have studied arbitration or practicing lawyers, of course, know that uh, there needs to be an arbitration clause in the contract for parties to be able to approach a tribunal, right? So you can, CAS has original jurisdiction, provided that the contractor's question has a CAS clause. It also has appellate jurisdiction. So like I think I've mentioned earlier that, let's say the FIFA tribunal issues the decision, ICC issues the decision, that can be appealed to CAS. Similarly, with the Vinesh Phogat matter, the International Wrestling Federation, I think, had issued a decision with respect to Vinesh Phogat that was appealed to CAS. CAS ad hoc. Tarun, would you like to explain what CAS ad hoc committee is?
Right.
Just
I think
in
there
a
are,
little.
if I remember correctly, I think there are a couple of them, which is one on doping, which does a lot of doping matters. I think that's one that one has to talk about. I think the ad hoc division also is in the Olympics and other sporting events as well. If that's is something which is a point of discussion. Who look at matters at the at the instance. I think Iman Khalif was something which one mentioned in the chat. Any kind, or whenever an Olympic is going on, you've got an ad hoc division in that particular Olympic village. If there's a FIFA tournament going on, it's going to be there, and a number of sports is happening. And then CAS has a very different uh, division for doping matters, because those become a little specific in nature, and both these divisions have their own uh, procedures. We can't get into the procedures today because, again, as Deep mentioned earlier, that this is just an introductory session. Gets a little difficult to discuss all the things. But please, go to the CAS website, go to the WADA website, the World Anti-Doping Agency website, and read about these organizations. The best part is that whatever information you want from about these particular international frame, regulatory bodies, you will find everything on the internet on their website. They are very, very good websites. So all the procedures, anything that you want, I think is available on their website. With CAS, you have the jurisprudence as well, or whatever cases that are there, which have been, which have reached CAS. I think the details, the awards are on the is on the website. So please feel free to reach out to these websites and check what they're essentially doing. I think in the last aspect of this slide, which is esport, a lot of people are putting on the chat box as well. That
Is
esport, I think
e-sport a
esport,
sport?
yeah, I think it's the next. It's not the next. I think it's already there, and it's one of the most celebrated areas. FIFA does a World Cup on it. They've got the E World Cup where you have players coming from all around the globe and competing for that trophy. I think they tried that in Formula One as well. You've got international level tournaments on of other games happening all around the globe. At the university level here, where I teach in GNLU, I think whenever we have a sporting, whenever we have our sports meet, we always have this section which is on e-sport. Athletes come, make good amount of money. Uh, I think very recently I was hearing that they're also coming out with a separate list for esports athlete when it comes to doping, because their requirement is a little different and so on and so forth. So I think that's a big thing happening in the world of sport. In data and sports, again, very important what kind of data is collected from the player. All this, whatever data, whatever equipment is used for officiating sport, whether it's a Hawkeye, the VAR, how that is going to be regulated. Very interesting, I think, area which one should look into. If you have any questions, specific questions, please put it on the live chat regarding data or esports, and then we can pick it up in the last half an hour.
Uh,
Again, yeah, please, Deep.
Someone's asking, how can PlayStation and Xbox be relevant in this case?
Oh,
I'm not sure what the question is. Could you please elaborate on that?
if
Do
you
you
can
mean
just
like,
elaborate, I think Junak Goswami,
yeah,
if you can please elaborate a little bit, we'll understand. If you're asking, is Xbox or PlayStation better? I have no answer for it because, that I don't understand technology to that level. But if the question is something else, please, uh, if you can just rephrase it again.
By
I
the
think,
way, yeah,
yeah.
what do you think? Is e-sport a sport?
Look, I would want to believe it as a sport. I think it has, again, a physicality, again, extremely high now. And that's why, they're
Right.
getting
Yeah.
a separate thing. So I believe it's a sport. A lot of people have reservations about it,
I
but I
think
would put it in the category of sports.
during one of our sessions, we had asked the attendees whether they think e-sport is a sport. Someone had responded with, "Yeah, it is because it's in the name. It's called
Yeah,
e-sport, so
that I
it has
remember.
to
I
be a sport."
remember. In
No,
one
but
of the
look,
sessions, that obviously it's a
I
sport
think
because, it's called e-sport.
I think when we have these sort of debates or discussions whether chess is a sport or esports is a sport, let's say if someone feels that this is should not be considered to be a sport, we are not trying to take anything away from it.
Absolutely.
It need not be a sport, right? It could be a competition or a game. I mean, chess again. I feel like okay, maybe it should not be categorized as a sport, but then it is uh, recognized as a sport, right, by the IOC. It's not a part of the Olympics, but it's considered to be a sport. Similarly with esports, a lot of people don't think it's a sport, but I mean, it does not mean that you need not you should still respect the people who are uh, esports athletes, right? I mean, so. But of course, this is a topic of discussion and debate, but anything.
I think
Anyway,
somebody called Terif Gaming is saying that we need a session on esport. You might have it in the near future.
yeah,
We'll be more than
we will
happy to
try
take
to
one.
organize.
I think that's something we're looking forward to. All right, let's I think quickly move forward. And when it comes to sports governance, there are a couple of case studies which we wanted to discuss, both related to India. One happened in India, the other happened in the recent Olympics, and that's going to be these two particular case studies. One is the Wrestling Federation of India case, which happened, and then Vinesh Fogart. A lot of people on the chat box were also talking about Vinesh Fogart. We will discuss it. I think whatever questions you have, we are more than happy to take it. I think everybody must have read about this. The whatever happened at the Wrestling Federation of India, Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh, who was the then president of the Wrestling Federation of India. Athletes called the wrestlers, very celebrated wrestlers, called him out for his behavior, specifically when it comes to sexual harassment and so on and so forth. There were protests. There were some very disturbing images of our athletes, being dragged on roads. Vinesh Fogart was one of them. Bajrang Punia was another. Sakshi Malik was one more. So it was a very unfortunate sight. speaks a lot about sports governance in India. But I think that particular incident has given us a way forward, that how, number one, we should have the best of the best governance structure. And then this, it's a beautiful move by the government that they've started working on the sports governance bill, which is going to be the next slide. With Vinesh Fogart case, I think Deep, you and I had an opportunity when it happened. And some in these scenarios, I think one should keep emotions aside, because we were analyzing it from a legal policy
Yeah.
standpoint. Very unfortunate for India, one very unfortunate for me and Deep as Indian sports lovers, and we wanted that medal. But at the end of the day, the rule is a rule that
Yeah.
can be a very a very off rule. Just like if you remember the 2019 Cricket World Cup, the maximum four rule was the rule there, that whoever hits the maximum four, if the game is drawn, will the World Cup will go to them. I think England and New Zealand final match had a lot of ups and downs because of the rule issue, and people said that they should have given the World Cup to both, but the rules said England should win it. You can have reservations about the rule, and the rule should change. But for Vinesh Fogart, again, it was a very unfortunate scenario. Deep, your thoughts on the Vinesh Fogart case?
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage each one of you to have a look at the Vinesh Phogat CAS Award. I think if you go to the CAS website, or even if you Google it, Vinesh Phogat CAS Award, you should be able to find it. So if you read the CAS Award, the arbitrator, I think it was a sole arbitrator, he goes on to say that it's a draconian rule,
Right.
but that is the law. So the arbitrator did not have much scope to overturn the decision.
Right.
So, although if you read the award, you would see that the arbitrator has also suggested that the laws be amended. But of course, I mean, I think most of us, we knew that uh, this possibility of Vinesh succeeding in the appeal was very, very slim.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is what it is.
I think very unfortunate though.
Yeah, it's
Very, very unfortunate. Uh, I think we should strive towards changing these rules if the rules are such. But when the rule is there, it's very difficult to change it when the tournament is going on.
right.
I think the maximum four rules in the 2019 Cricket World Cup, I think that changed immediately after the World Cup got over, is what I heard from somewhere. I don't know if they've still changed it. I think our focus should be changing the rules. But at that particular point of time, as Deep mentioned, it
Yeah.
was next to impossible to change it.
I
Uh,
mean, the point also, sorry, to interrupt you. So we were
Yo,
having
please.
a discussion, I think Saksham and I, when we were conducting that course at GNLU, that
Yeah.
of course we are not suggesting that she should have been given the gold medal. But I mean, think about it. It's so unfair that she went all the way to the finals. So the least you can do is give her the silver medal, right? It can be
Right.
a walkover. Okay.
Right.
But then because for the first 3 or 4 bouts, she was under the weight requirement, right? So she deservedly. It's different from something like doping.
Right. Absolutely.
From the very beginning, you were performing at that level because you were, I mean, presumably because of some substance that you were using. But Vinesh did not really cheat, right? It just so happens that before the finals, she was a bit overweight. So she should have at least been awarded the silver medal, right? But anyhow, I mean, that's the law, and hopefully they will change it, and India will benefit from it next time around.
Right.
So it's a
I think
shame.
now that point has come in. I think Junak Goswami about Xbox and PlayStation. Very interesting point,
Okay.
Junak. I think the question is that how Xbox and PlayStation can be regulated, and can there be a universal law for it? I think if it becomes like a huge thing, and it is becoming a huge thing, we would need to have an international framework for governing esports, and there the equipment part will also come in. You've got malwares and softwares which esport athletes try to use to manipulate sport or manipulate a particular tournament. There have been instances of that. There have been instances where anti cheat uh, softwares have been developed, bots have been developed. Very interesting point. I think we need to look into it as soon as it becomes a huge entity, which it is becoming. So universal regulation would be the need of the hour. Let's see wherever it gets drafted. I haven't. There are a few regulations, of course, out there. but I don't think so. Every country, or when every tournament, I would say not country, I think they use their own regulations to regulate a particular esport tournament. But if it becomes a huge thing, I think we would need a big regulation which will govern it. So interesting question. Let me just, before we move forward, let me just quickly see if there is anything important on the chat box. Governance, how is done to improve sports in India? I think uh, Arjun Praveen, we'll come to that. You're talking about the sports governance aspect, how to improve it. We will come to that particular slide. There was one more comment made, while we were discussing the political movement aspect. Of course, we will be a little stupid if we take out the political angle whenever such protest happens, and so on and so forth. In the Indian sports governance, you've got politicians coming in. It is influenced by it, and it's not only Indian sport, it's the world sport, which is kind of affected by politicians and political parties. Unfortunate, but it happens, and we can't deny that. So yes, if that's the reservation, it's something that I would agree to, that there is a political dimension to a number of things which happen in sport. I don't want to make comment on the protest, because I don't have full-fledged information if it was a political movement and so on and so forth. But it was for a very good reason, which was sexual harassment of athletes, and I think that's very important, that these issues should come out in public domain for
Whether
discussion.
that particular movement was politically motivated or not is not the question here.
Right.
Generally, of course, sexual harassment is fairly common in women's sports, especially. So, of course, that these things need to be addressed.
Yeah.
We can't simply state that, oh, Congress, BJP, and all of that. I mean, this happens. Not every person who's making an allegation, and it's worth looking into at least. Of course,
Right.
I'm not saying that the moment some athlete makes an allegation, you hold the accused guilty, and you should shame him. But then these things need to we need to look into these things,
Yeah.
and more protection needs to be provided to minors, to athletes in general. I mean, not even not simply female athletes, to minors and also athletes in general.
Right.
Um, so
I
yeah,
think in India, Deep, I think one of the most important aspects of athletes is that athletes in India come from very vulnerable groups when it comes to education,
yes,
socio-economic background. I think there you need even more
yeah,
safeguards,
yeah,
very sophisticated ones. So I think as a sports lawyer, all the attendees who are here, it kind of becomes our responsibility as well, that whenever you are representing an athlete, have that kind of sympathy and empathy for them, because they might not understand a lot of international regulations, and that's where we come in as a community of sports lawyers and sports policy makers, right? I think we'll discuss about these things in the end of the, because
yeah.
there are questions coming on
Definitely.
opportunities. Let's very quickly move forward to something that the Indian government recently did, and that's the draft national sports governance bill. It was open for public consultation as well, public inputs as well. I don't know how many people got an opportunity to read about this bill after this session. If you haven't read, please read about it. And now the public consultation is over, but you can still send your inputs to the government. You can put it on LinkedIn, which is a great way to network and engage people. I think if you have a very valid point, this will be picked and might become a part of the bill whenever it becomes an act. I think they've done a couple of very interesting things, Deep, which I think happens at the international level. One is, of course, your favorite part of Appellate Sports Tribunal. I think they want to introduce that. How do you see that shaping up, Deep? There have been some instances before where India has tried to make its own arbitration, tribunals, but they haven't been very successful. But now having an Appellate Sports Tribunal, how do you look at that as a move?
I mean, it would be a bit of a challenge, of course, to find judges. That would be the
True.
first thing. There's a
Right.
dearth of good quality sports uh, people who are well versed with sports. There's a sports tribunal in Brazil, in
Right.
Portugal, many other countries, but they also have competent people.
Right.
I'm not saying that we don't have competent judges in the country, but I mean that I wouldn't say that, even if I feel that's the case. Of course, that's not the case. But the thing is, there are not many who are well versed with sports. So that's going to be a challenge. Second, I mean, uh, federations, the way they function, I don't know if federations will uh, at least at the state levels, where they are in a position to comply with these regulations.
Right.
Just by way of example, because I work in the football industry quite a bit. Football, the governance structure, I mean, there's a proper structure in place. So at the top, you have FIFA.
Right.
Then in country, you have the All India Football Federation. And under the AIFF, you have several state federations. But once you, uh, at the AIFF level, still there is some transparency. Okay. Uh, Things work. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it still functions. But once you go to the state level, it's absolute chaos.
Right.
Okay. I mean, for the past, I think we are working on a case. I cannot discuss the details, but then I think for the past 4 months now, I've been trying to get a hearing for my clients, and there's no response from the state federation concerned here. You know, I mean, it's ridiculous, and we've been requesting them just to let us know when we can have a hearing.
Right.
So what happens at the state level is they will impose sanctions on athletes. And we are talking about football here, which is one of the top sports in the country. It's, of course, not as big as cricket, or football is not as popular in India as it is in some European countries or South American countries, but still it's a big sport, right? I'd say top three in India,
Right.
arguably top five, let's say.
Yeah.
So this is how things work. I mean, there's no remedy available. So it becomes extremely difficult. So, uh, I don't know, like how I mean, of course, there might be some regulations on paper, but regarding the enforcement part, I really have my doubts at this juncture. But of course, I think it's a good start. We need to
Absolutely. I think that's where we have
start
to be
somewhere,
positive.
right? So,
I think
yeah,
also the what I believe is that the National Sports Governance Bill
mm,
also comes with the vision that by 2036 we will have the hosting rights
yeah,
for the Olympics. So I think
Olympics.
that might take a bit of time, and I think we've got 10, 11 years from now. We can develop such structures. Will take a lot of time. I think we should look at in best international practices. But one
Uh,
thing I think which you and I both discuss every
mm,
time whenever we are teaching sports law and policy, we just can't copy paste systems from abroad because ours is a very different situation. We've got a very different group of set of people that we have to
The
deal with.
massive country for start.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And I think there, the Brussels effect, where you just pick up things from the West and
yeah.
put it in the Indian structure, I think that becomes a problem. We can't do that. We shouldn't do that. Also, very important thing, I think, which this bill has is the athlete commission. The IOC has an athlete commission, and that has given some extremely good results because then you have athletes coming in in the governance structure when it comes to international sport. So I think that move at the domestic level is very, very important and something that was never spoken before in Indian sport. That is the safe sports policy. And for all the viewers which we have today, safe sport does not only mean sexual harassment and so on and so forth, but a number of other things come in safe sports. How you make your infrastructure, what kind of equipment you use, is the equipment of global standard, which is very, very important. The infrastructure that you develop is that of global standard. So a safe sports policy being a part of the governance bill, I think I congratulate the government for doing that because that's a very important area that one has to look into. Again, I would suggest, we would suggest everybody to please go and take a look of the national sports governance bill that has come out. Very, very important for India, and it would be great to hear your thoughts on it. You can reach out to us on LinkedIn, or you can send your comments to Just Corpus, and maybe Ayush, you and your team can just send it to us, and we'll be more than happy to take these things. I think the next slide is kind of covered already, where India is looking forward to host the 2036 Olympic. We had the 141st session in Mumbai in 2023. So that was a very huge thing for India. Let's see what happens in 2036. We have to look at it from a country perspective. Are we ready? The infrastructure, the thought process, and we have to come out of this whole assumption that sports is only a leisure activity. It's way beyond that. It's something that defines culture. I think the major reason why West does so well in playing sport and governing sport. They also have their own issues. Nobody can deny that. And I think, Deep, you've worked in Spain, you've seen a number of issues there. But I think they do it better because of the reason that they actually consider sport as a very important aspect of human culture, human evolution. I think we have to take that road as well. Uh, let's very quickly go to, because I think we've got another 40 minutes or so, but we want to keep the last 25-30 minutes for question and answer. Let's go to something very interesting, which I think a lot of people might have their own opinion on, which is the Border-Gavaskar Trophy. Deep, did you get an opportunity, first of all, to follow the tournament this time?
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, I do enjoy watching Test cricket, but of course, it's not possible for me at least to sit through the entire day. But what I do is, it's playing on television. I'll be working, but then it's
Right.
playing in the background. So whenever I get an opportunity, when Bumrah is coming on the bowl, I try to watch those spells. I also enjoy watching Virat Kohli bat. Unfortunately, that he
This
didn't.
did not happen this time.
All
This
that much.
time,
He scored 100, but then he did score a century. People
absolutely.
have forgotten that. But of course, not the best for Kohli.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I do try to watch cricket whenever I can. Test cricket, I do really enjoy watching still.
Right.
More than IPL. I'm old. What can I say?
That's actually true. I don't know how many people are from our generation of the 90s. It's actually true. We love watching Test cricket more than IPL. You call us oldies or whatever, but that's how we are. And the generation that we come from, I think Test cricket was something that like people used to sit the entire day to watch it.
Yeah,
We come from the Azharuddin, the Saurav Ganguly, Rahul Dravid, Ajay Jadeja era. When they were heroes for the Indian cricket, Matthew Hayden, Adam Gilchrist, Michael Bevan, Brian Lara, and also, we loved our Test cricket. And like Deep mentioned, we try to follow it every now and then. Unfortunately, the Border Gavaskar Trophy wasn't something that was very helpful for India. We also missed our berth for the World Test Championship. But one very important aspect from a legal standpoint that came in was this particular image with Constas and Virat Kohli getting into an altercation. Before discussing this particular case, Deep, we've got a number of code of conducts around the globe.
I'll have to stop you there. I think someone's regarding our discussion on Test cricket. Someone's like, yes, that's true, sir. My father also says the same.
Okay, okay. I don't know if we
IPL,
are on the
IPL is
same.
fun to watch at the stadium, though. I mean, if you give me a choice, I maybe in India, I would rather watch an IPL game at the stadium.
Yeah, not a Test cricket. It becomes.
Uh,
I'm pretty sure. My father says the same. I think both of us, both all three of us, come from the same generation, though. But let's see. I think Test cricket
yeah,
is something very, very important. I think, not only in cricket, we've seen this code of conduct issues deep in football as well. Whether it's racism, I think Luis Suarez is a major example of biting players. Happened in Liverpool. Happened,
yeah,
while he was playing for Uruguay as well. His handball issue came in. Uh, did you ever get an opportunity to maybe work on a case where the code of conduct was
yeah.
something that was, targeted?
No, no, absolutely. I mean, a lot of cases. Last year, we worked on a case where a football player. This happened in India. None of the players were Indian, but I think one was from anyhow, doesn't matter, from different countries.
Right.
So the allegation was that our client had spat towards or at, it was not clear what the allegation was, but spat at him.
Right.
That's what the other player was contending. So we had a disciplinary hearing. We went to we appeared before the AIFF disciplinary committee, and of course, there's a process, right?
Right.
We had submitted some video evidence, um, which, in our opinion, was inconclusive. And of course, the referee plays a huge role there. The referee's testimony is of extreme importance, right? Because when it comes to on-field misconduct, you can look at the video footage. If that's conclusive, of course, like Kohli and Constas, it's conclusive, right? You can clearly see that Kohli pumps into Constas.
Right.
But let's say if Constas is Constas, right? How do you
Yeah.
pronounce it? Yeah,
Yeah. Constas.
Constas, yeah. His allegation was that Virat Kohli had spat at him, and
Right.
if there's no clear footage,
Right.
what do you do? Then perhaps you have to rely on the testimony of the umpires
Right.
or the fellow players even. I think someone mentioned the monkey gate
Yeah, yeah. I think it's again
incident
on the chat box, the monkey
chat
gate.
box. So yeah, that was also interesting for those who are
Right.
not aware. This was I don't remember the year, but Simons had alleged that Harbhajan Singh had called him a monkey.
Yeah, I think the 2008 BGT
Right.
trophy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was in Australia, maybe in Adelaide or Sydney.
yeah,
And then there was a hearing conducted. And I think, if I remember correctly, Sachin Tendulkar was playing in the non-striker end when
right,
Harbhajan was batting, and this whole episode happened. And then Sachin was also asked to testify before the
right.
committee. So yeah, these incidents are very common. You get a lot of incidents regarding misconduct, not only from players, also spectators.
Right. Oh,
Not
that's a very important
uncommon,
area.
yeah, it's not uncommon for spectators to throw something on the pitch or for a fight to break out. There have also been incidents of violence against players. So yeah, these matters we do get from time to time.
Yeah, and violence, I think for everyone, violence does not only mean that somebody has to come and hit somebody. I think there can be verbal and gesture violences as well. I think Deep, if you remember, Danny Alves had to face that racism issue where
Yeah,
he
that
was,
was
yeah, that was extremely,
that was
extremely,
he handled it really well.
pretty extremely
Yeah.
well. I really congratulate him. For everybody, I think just check that video if you find it on YouTube, where Danny Alves, who's a Barcelona player, and he went to take a corner kick, and somebody from the stadium just threw a banana towards him. This was considered to be a racist act
Yeah, because it's
towards.
like monkey, so black. So
Yeah,
you're a black person, so you're a monkey, so you eat banana.
absolutely.
That's how
So
the
he picked
joke
up
goes.
the
I think it's
banana,
very silly, you know.
sliced it out, and ate it. I think the same thing happened with,
He
and
took a
that was a
bite
very
out of
good
the
way to deal
banana
with
and
it.
then like took the corner.
Yeah,
So it's
and
funny.
very, very good way to deal with it. I think that's
Yeah.
very brave of him. I think the same thing happened with Mario Balotelli when he entered the stadium, and there were people sitting in the top, seats of the stadium, and they had these soft stuffed bananas. And as soon as he came in, started making those monkey chants and started,
Yeah.
going bonkers with those bananas. And I think these are very, very important things to look at. But for everybody who's with us today, this particular matter where Virat Kohli and Constas came into altercation, I think Virat Kohli was given a 20% match fee was deducted, and this was kind of considered to be a level one breach of the ICC code. I think if you look at Article 2.12, if I remember correctly, of the ICC Code of Conduct, I think this particular thing falls in that category where you deliberately go towards a player and maybe try to act a little funny. All love for Virat Kohli, but as a cricket fan maybe, and I think people might have a different opinion, he shouldn't have done it. It wasn't required at all. But I think that's where he gets his motivation. He's a little somebody who wants to take the fight to the opponent. If it works for him, great. In this case, unfortunately, it did not. In this series, unfortunately, it did not. And there were a number of opinions, people had about it. A lot of people even criticized Constas, because I think I was reading uh, uh, a statement by Steve Harmison, who was one of England's great bowlers. He said that Constas should also not altercate with players because there were news that he had been doing the same thing since the
Yeah.
beginning of the championship of the Border-Gavaskar Trophy, and he should work on his defense. Is what Steve Harmison said. So I think people have their own opinions, but from a
That's
cricket
a
fan perspective, yeah,
Australia-England rivalry, I think.
yeah, I think the Ashes rivalry came out, but it wasn't required. I think,
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
yeah,
Yeah.
you shouldn't do these things whenever you're such a veteran player and he's just somebody who's coming in. Wasn't required. I think the funny incident in this was, or something that I loved, was how Bumrah actually went to Constas when Usman Khwaja was
Yeah.
was sent to the stadium on the last ball. How Bumrah did it, I think I would be okay with that, going towards him, just showing him eyes and coming back. But this was something a little too much, which wasn't required. But anything, I think it is about however you like it. Uh, which brings us, maybe all of us, to the last part of what we have for you on the platter, and then we are open to questions, any kind of question that you want to ask, which is about opportunities in sports. Uh, and two specific, I think, areas where you
Deep
can
is
look.
saying everything is fair in love and war, and this was VGT.
Yeah, absolutely, Hanif. It's great. I think if you want to put it this way, it's great. Sledging is okay during match. Sledging till the time, Suryansh is one who's asked this question. Yeah. Till the time it's not below the belt, Suryansh, it's okay. When we used to play cricket, we used to say things like, iska pav nahi chal raha hai, isko ball se dar lag raha hai. All of these things,
I
I
think
think
that
it's
is completely fine.
that is completely fine. You
That's
can do
completely
that.
fine.
Ki dikh nahi rahi, and all of this. I think if you
I think
want to hear
abusive
sledging
language
stories,
is a little,
yeah,
I'm not so sure about abusive language. I mean,
right,
look, we have done it perhaps on the
right.
field of sport, but we also did learn from what we are watching on television. So I'm not sure if where one needs to draw the
Yeah,
line.
I think being an old school sports lover, I would say the best way to answer to somebody is by performing. Though I've never done it myself, I always got into this sledging aspect, but never
Yeah.
got into a
No,
physical
it's easy
audience.
for us to say now. I mean, I
True,
don't play
true. When
sport
we
all
were
that
there, we
much.
used
Even if
to
I
say
was
that.
playing, it's with friends. But
Yeah,
then, of course, when we are younger, I mean, I'm sure I must
we have
have.
done it. We have done it. I'm not going to say that we haven't done it.
And
We have
then
done it.
cricket is playing at cricket players or football player, whichever athlete, at that level when there's so much at stake. Like inter-college football games used to get so heated up. Inter-college, forget about inter-college, intra-batch or whatever,
Yeah,
used to get so heated up. I mean, one can only imagine what, these players are going through. So, I mean, we need to cut them a bit of slack, but of course, they are also professional athletes. So, I mean, there's a debate, right? I mean, abusive language, is it okay for professionals? I mean, is it okay for two lawyers to like swear at each other, in a court of law? So why is it okay for uh,
anybody. True.
a cricket player, like the whole monkey gate? I mean, Harbhajan's defense was he said marky, not
Yeah,
monkey. I mean,
something else. Yeah.
is that okay? But anyhow, that is a debate
Yeah.
for another day, I suppose.
And
Yeah,
just
Tarun.
because you mentioned about Deep, I remember not only traditional sports like cricket and football when we were playing them when we were young, we used to sledge each other while we used to play this game called pen fight, if you remember. Like anybody who's taking a
That
stroke
is
in
cool.
pen flight, हाथ कांप रहा है इसके हाथ कांप रहे नहीं लगे. So we have done it, right? But in all this in light humor is great, but I think sometimes it goes a little too far. And that's where the law and policy has to step in. All right, I think the last part, which is the opportunities, I think everybody's excited about that. People are putting a lot of questions on the live chat as well. Two specific areas, and I think the good part with Doctrina Ludus as an entity is that we come from these two particular aspects. One is about I come from academia, policy, and research, and Deep comes from legal practice and advisory. So we have our own perceptions about it. But there is a list of things that we have made as do's and don'ts, which we will share with you in the next two slides. Deep, something out of experience that you want to share specifically when it comes to legal practice and advisory. You do it a lot every day.
Uh, someone, so what should one look to do if they want to get into sports law practice?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. So, look, I mean, of course, it's a niche field, goes without saying, but it has grown quite a bit. So, I have been taking interest in sports law since 2009 or 2010. Okay, so it's been like 14, 15 years now. So, I did my first internship in sports law back in 2010 when I was in my second year of law school, I think. So I've seen how things have changed the past 15 years. So there has been a lot of development in India and abroad as well. And it's an opportunity which you could look to explore. Having said that, of course, there are not a plethora of opportunities. You will not um, find a lot of jobs in sports if you compare it to more, let's say, mainstream fields like corporate law or taxation or criminal law. But of course, there are more opportunities now. Even if you look around, we have quite a few people who are practicing sports law in India, and also there are academicians like Tarun and a few others. So things are getting much better. And what's really good to see is that there are a lot of events regarding sports law,
true.
whether that be webinars or events like this one or courses. A lot of universities are happy to want to conduct a course on sports law. This wasn't the case, let's say, around 10, 12 years back when I was in law school. Um, coming to how to become a sports lawyer, or I mean, of course, becoming a sports lawyer is a process, but how to get more information or learn a bit more. I mean, of course, attend events conferences and webinars. Try to get an internship as well. There are a few sports law firms in India and abroad as well. Some firms from other parts of the world also take in interns, remote interns in India as well. Some firms offer internships. Mm, so yeah, I mean, start exploring the field. If you think it's something that is of interest to you, take it one step at a time. Try to learn more and reach out to people. And once you feel like, okay, this is something which you wish to do going forward, of course, there are opportunities. Not like there are no opportunities. Yeah.
Or maybe you create opportunities like Deep, you started your own firm, which takes a little bit of time for sure. But I think that's another way of looking at it.
I mean, I started my firm, of course, after having worked for a few years in the sports industry in India. I did my master's and then I worked abroad for a few years. Then I started my own firm. So, of course, those who are looking to get into sports law, it might be a bit tricky to start your own practice. But you need to, if you put in like a few years, if you build a client base, you build some contacts, of course, that's an option as well. I mean, that's a great option. I think we are going to see, I hope that we'll see more law firms in India.
Right.
Um,
I think big law firms have already started, I think, the sports law practice. But even if people are asking for names, I think on the chat box as well, Sensato Legal, which is the firm, I think is something that one can look into. There are also other firms, like, you've got something called Law NK. Nandan Kamath, who's one of the celebrated sports lawyer of
One
the
of the
country.
oldest firms. That's
One
where
of
I
the
was
oldest firms.
back in 2010. So you can
Yeah.
imagine we've been around
Yeah.
for more than 15 years. So it's the
15 years.
oldest sports law firm in India, from what I know.
Yeah, yeah. So that's one. I think Vidushpat Singhania, who's also a very celebrated sports lawyer, runs Krida Legal in Delhi. I think somebody was talking about Delhi. Krida Legal is a firm that you can look into. There's some independent sports lawyer in Delhi working in the Supreme Court at the High Court. One of the names that come to my mind is Shivam Singh, who's extremely, extremely celebrated in that area. Parth Goswami is again. Ahana Mehrotra is a
Parth
great
Goswami works on doping related
doping
matters.
related
If
matters.
someone is doping, you could look him up on LinkedIn and maybe
Yeah, please. And you can reach out to us on LinkedIn.
Of course.
Deep and I have our own profiles. You can reach out to us through Doctrina Ludus as well. Uh, I think there is just a couple of slides that we created just for all of you to remember the do's and don'ts, which I think is very, very important. In Calcutta, somebody is saying in Calcutta, yes, Deep's firm, I think, works from Calcutta. Deep generally
Yeah,
works.
but
That's where he is.
at the moment, we are taking remote interns, but
Absolutely.
wherever you're from, like you can be from some other country, you could apply.
Right. And maybe, before you apply, these are the things that you can remember. It's very essential. I think I'm not going to take all the points here, but one of the most important things which I think has helped both Deep and I is networking, guys. Please be out there. Try to look at what's happening around the globe. As Deep mentioned, because of the corona situation that happened in 2020. Now, even international law firms are working, on remote basis, and they're taking interns. So that's a very, very good sign for all of you who want to be in
So,
this area.
something I'd like to say, Tarun,
Yeah.
and this is because you brought up the whole issue about me starting a law firm here. Look, what I believe in, and this is like, there's a lot of, I think we are missing out on some opportunities. So when we look at international sports law,
Hmm.
okay, there are a lot of matters, and especially in football, and in many countries, you find a lot of sports lawyers who are
Right.
not only focused on their own country, they are working on matters having international dimension, which is primarily what I do as well. I don't think enough people are doing that in India,
Right.
and that should happen. I mean, why do you want to limit yourself only to India in sports? No,
Right.
I mean, I'm maybe only 30% of my clients, 20 to 30% of my clients are Indian.
Right.
That's a stretch. So when I was working in Europe, this is something I realized that okay, I was working with Spanish sports law firm, but then I don't know, maybe 40% of their cases were based out of Spain.
Right.
We were tackling matters from different parts of the world. So why can't we do that uh, from India? I
True.
mean,
True.
it is absolutely doable.
Yeah. And I think people have done it before, and that's what we are trying to make. This is the exact point that we want to make here. I think this all can only happen when you're out there. network with industry stakeholders. It's important to know what's happening, what are these global international trends. I think some people are again putting on the chat regarding, in Bangalore, Law NK Bharat V has asked for Bangaluru. Law NK and I think Game Changers Law are two firms which are based out of Bangalore who work in the area of sports law. So you can reach out to them. And all of this, is because we were at the right point of time, we were doing this networking. So it's very, very important. And it's very important to have a great grip over your, legal subjects. And look, at the end of the day, one has to understand that yes, sports has its own complexities, but sports law is an amalgamation of all these law and how they will work in a sporting ecosystem. So when you're reading law at whatever law school you are in, it's extremely important to be thorough with your subjects, which are specifically sports related, contracts, IPR, labor laws, because that's very important. You can't see sports as an entity in isolation. You have to, make sure that you understand these things. So that's very important. One thing which I really want to tell here, and I think Deep and I always discussed it, please don't get distracted because of the charm of sports. So when I say charm of sports, I think a lot of people want to get into sports law because they think that sports law is going to be a great tool for them to meet Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, and Sachin Tendulkar, Smriti Mandana. That might not happen. Look, at the end of the day, it's a legal job. If of course you're working for a firm who represents such kind of athletes, you might get an opportunity to meet them. But if you're just blinded by the glamour of it, that this is my way to reach to Virat Kohli and tell him how big a fan I am, no, that's not going to happen. So if you love the entity from a legal standpoint, it's great. The charm of it is there, but it's just the pushing force should not be that I'm going to meet the best of my uh, athletes because I'm a sports lawyer. That might not happen, and that does not happen in a lot of cases. Initially, when I started reading about it, I also thought that this is a great opportunity to meet all these heroes. I meet Cristiano Ronaldo. I'm a huge Iker Casillas fan, so maybe I become an international sports lawyer. It doesn't work that way. I don't know how many big shot people, deep, if you've represented them, you got an opportunity to actually meet them. But so you will be a better person to tell this thing.
I mean, honestly, the football players, especially that I've met, most of them I've met at conferences and such, like
Right,
Brazilian Ronaldo and all.
right,
But so I have been working on a deal, just by way example, with a legendary football player.
right,
Okay, one of the names that you mentioned of the past 8 months, I think the deal hasn't. We haven't been able to close the deal yet. I mean, I'm representing one of the parties. There's
right,
several parties. It's an endorsement deal, and I have not met this player yet. I mean, I could tell you guys, it's messy. Okay,
right.
we are trying to get a deal done, and I'm representing one of the parties. So, there are a lot of parties involved when we talk about these big guys, and a lot of back and forth. I don't know if the deal will be finalized, and if it does, I don't know. Maybe, just maybe, if my client is okay with it, but more importantly, if they pay for my ticket, I might go to Miami and might get a chance to see Messi. But I mean, again, that is firstly the deal may not go through, and
Mhm.
even if it does, don't get into sports like Tarun said, because you may meet Messi or Virat Kohli or whoever it is, next generation of superstars, Yashasvi Jaiswal or I don't know, Vinicius. No. Don't get into sports law if that is your dream. I mean, and also it doesn't matter. Trust me. I mean, it's not that big a deal when you meet like a famous football player. Like I've met the likes of met, as in it's not like I've had uh, dinner with them, but I've met them professionally, like PK and a lot of Barcelona players. But it's really not that big a deal, to be honest, in my opinion. Only when I met Ronaldo, like Brazilian Ronaldo, it was great because I also belong to a generation where we grew up idolizing players like Ronaldo, Zidane, and Maldini. I think only if I meet Maldini, I might feel a bit overwhelmed. Like meeting Ronaldo was great, but again, it's not like don't get into sports law for that reason.
I don't know if I can call it a hairstyle, but just deep for everybody who loves Ronaldo. The I would call him the real
R9.
Ronaldo, R9. He used to be,
Yeah.
we used to call him R9. I actually had a haircut like him. He,
Like this.
rarely had a hair. There was a patch there that he used to have. And then when I was in school, I actually had that haircut. So, R9 is somebody it's kind of deemed come to. I think how Deep mentioned about Maldini, I think I'll get supremely overwhelmed if I get an opportunity to meet Iker Casillas. And now everybody knows if you want to meet Lionel Messi, who you have to reach out to. It's going to be Deep. Deep, thank you for telling everyone that you are the ticket to reach out to Messi.
I will
I
give
think,
you an example. I mean, it's like I haven't spoken to Messi even once.
yeah.
I mean, Messi probably does not know that I exist. So that's the thing.
Very soon he might just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that's what happens, right? You work behind the scenes for the most part. Of course, if you represent the player, you might, of course, meet the player
Absolutely.
frequently. Yeah, but for that, of course, you need to get to the absolute top level. I haven't reached that level, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not representing Messi anytime soon.
Right.
Maybe in
But
the
yeah,
next 10, 15 years, I'll get to that level. But yeah.
yeah, I think that's something that one has to keep. And don't, again, just to underline it again, don't just fall for the glamour of it. It's a legal job that you have to do. It is very interesting if you love sports, because you can actually connect with the problems that athletes face because you're watching them on a daily basis. But the glamour of it is something which is sometimes blinds people, and then then you're up for a disappointment. So don't look at it from that angle. I think one more thing, especially in the don'ts that I wanted to discuss and we wanted to discuss, is that there is plethora of work in other sports as well. I think in India, of course, it's about cricket, but if you look at Formula One, if you look at basketball, golf, tennis, kabaddi, and so on and so forth. Football, of course. One doesn't have to even state that. I think there is a lot of work in other sports as well. So try to look at those regulations. Very, very important for one to understand. In India, it's primarily cricket because it's followed, but you can also work in various other sport as well. I think this is from our side. Deep, anything specific that you want to add, uh, please feel free. But this was an absolute pleasure. Very, very novel for both of us. I did not know. Now I understand how it seems, how it feels when you're on a live chat. I'm
Yeah.
glad that there were no, live chat comments which
Nasty
one,
comments.
yeah, yeah, which one can be exposed to. So I think we are safe that ways. Thank you very much, everyone who has joined. We are more than happy to look at the feedback. I think I'll send a heart. Then this heart goes for everyone who was a part of it. Thank you so very much, Deep. Anything that you want to say?
No, I think we have 10 odd minutes left. So
Yeah,
if anyone has any questions, please feel.
please. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir, Tarun sir, and Deep sir, for such an enlightening and engaging session. I hope you have already checked that people keep on engaging on the YouTube by making different connectivity with the like Lionel Messi and Ronaldo, etc., etc. And also the people were sending the text messages in the some normal language, or you can say that informal language, so that they are more of connecting with you guys, so that whatever the Tarun sir or the Deep sir is speaking, they are able to connect them. I have shared one text also in the chat box in the Zoom
Yeah, I
itself.
saw
If you
that. I
have,
saw that.
if you have seen that, so yeah, so the session was very good in nature. So if both of you sir allow, then we can go ahead with some of the questions.
Yeah, we can absolutely. If you have Ayush any specific questions, I think one thing
Yeah.
that we want to add, and through Just Corpus and even through Doctrina Ludus, we want to keep such sessions alive because it's very important. Very soon, I think in March 2025, Doctrina Ludus is coming out with a course on football laws. I think you keep checking our LinkedIn page, our website for this. And the great part about that course is that we are also providing internship opportunities with very well-known international sports law firms. So anybody who's interested in sports law, specifically football laws, I think that is something that you can sign up for. The information about it will be out soon in the coming week. So keep checking the our Instagram page, which is called Doctrina Ludus, and our website as well. Ayush, any questions coming in?
Yeah, and for the better connectivity, sir, I'll share the Instagram and the LinkedIn profile link of Doctrina
Please,
Ludus, and
please.
also your own profile links also, because people keep on
Absolutely.
asking the chat box. So with the e-certificates that they will be getting, we'll share it so that they can connect with you and can explore this field. So starting
Absolutely.
with this, as you mentioned about your certificate course that is going to be launched or coming in the March. So you have mentioned about the internship. So starting with that question only, one of the candidate has asked what type of internship is required to excel in sports law, or how many firms in just a rough number are good enough to provide, like if we have interned at this much of places, we are good enough that we hold some good relevance or hold some good knowledge in this sport. What is your recommendation on this, Tarun sir, starting with you?
I think Deep would be a better person to answer that because he's somebody who has a practical experience. Deep, what's been your experience in
Yeah.
this?
Look, I mean, in your 5 years of law school, I'd say try to, if you're interested in sports law, try to do at least a couple of sports law internships. So by the time in your fifth year, and again, look, this is not an industry where you will always find employment opportunities. In fact, most of us, we started somewhere else and then switched to sports law later in our careers. Whether that be 2 years later or 3 years later, only the ones who are very fortunate uh, get to join the industry as a fresher. So simply because you have not been able to start your career in sports does not mean it's over for you. Your career has
Absolutely.
just begun. So 2, 3 years, 4 years later, you can find opportunities. It's important to stay in touch with the industry though. But from the perspective of a student, I mean, start off with one, see if you like it or not. You do one research internship or one sports law firm internship. Okay, there are 4, 5 options in India, I'd say, when it comes to law firms. You apply at these firms. But I'd say, you know what, before you apply for internships, you need something on your CV. So when I'm looking at applications these days, I'm looking at what sports law experience, not sports law experience in terms of work experience they have, but what all they have done
True.
related to sports law. Have they enrolled for a course? Have they written an article? So this is what I'm primarily looking at, not your GPA and not what all firms you worked at. Okay. I'm primarily looking at what sort of experience you have because I want people who are interested, genuinely interested in sports law and want to learn, right? So that's what you should be focusing on.
Right.
Internships you may not always find, but you can write articles. You can write a blog post. That's not so challenging.
And I think Deep, what you just mentioned, just to add to what Deep mentioned, I think writing articles and blog, and I think there was one question on the chat on the YouTube chat about ISLJ, which is the International Sports Law Journal, and law in sports. I think these kind of opportunities, blogs, journals, actually gives a lot of traction to your profile. Deep, who's himself in the practical zone of sports law, is telling you that writing is very important, and I am telling you. Because I've known people, I've known experts in the area who write regularly in the area, and their work is considered to be, a must read in the sports law ecosystem. And because of that, they've got great opportunities to work with athletes, to work in the area of sports law. So writing about it, it's not just reading. Sometimes you just read things, but expressing yourself about specifically the contemporary issues that are happening in the world of sport gives you a lot of traction. And it's coming from Deep. Your CV should have these articles. One should see, as soon as somebody sees your CV, they should have this whole image about you that, look, this person is interested in the area, and that interest can only be reflected through doing courses, conferences, networking, and so on and so forth. So people think that writing, it's just very academic. No, it gives you a very in-depth, it gives you an in-depth knowledge about a particular thing, and it gives a lot of a lot of weightage to your CV, specifically when it comes to contemporary areas like sports law. Yeah. uh yes,
Yeah.
I use any other
Yes,
question.
yes. Thank you, sir, for the lovely answer. Moving further, so what are the biggest challenges sports lawyers are facing today, and how can one be prepared to overcome them? This question I would like to refer to you, Deep, sir.
Ooh, that's a difficult question to answer. I mean, there are a lot of
I think the
challenges.
first step, Deep, is amount of work, which you mentioned earlier itself.
Amount of work
Yes.
is there. I mean, it's a little tricky to build a client base No, I mean, people don't know how to get clients, right? It can take a while. You need to work in the industry for a while because, again, let's say if you have a civil law practice or intellectual property practice, I'm not saying that there will be clients waiting outside your door from day one, but then still there are more people. I mean, anyone can get involved in a civil law dispute, or anyone who, I mean, most people could get into need some IP related help, right? But we cater to a very small number of people. It can be tricky. So that's a challenge for any sports law practitioner. Other than that, when it comes to, of course, there is work pressure, and let's say if you have a practice where you work with people from different parts of the world, language can be a barrier, and different time zones. These are challenges that I personally face. Okay. Yeah. Maybe we could take one more question for
Yeah.
Tarun.
Yes, for sure, sir. So the next question is related to academia only. How sports law will play a major role in the upcoming years in the academia and also in the legal field? So Tarun, sir, if you can elaborate on the same.
If you can just repeat it once more, Ayush, for me, I didn't
Yeah,
get the question.
sure. So how sports law will play a major role in the upcoming years in academia and
Okay.
also in the legal field?
Look, from an academic perspective, I'm one of those fortunate people to be very honest, who get this opportunity to teach sports law. Very few people in Indian academics are into this area. Mostly, you have people like Deep who are practitioners coming. The majority of courses that I've taught, I think, apart from me, I've got a colleague in GNLU, Niyati Pandey. Um, I don't remember engaging with any academic person, a person coming from an academic background. Couple of my friends from Jindal have been a part of our courses and taught, with us, but that's extremely rare. And I think that is where a huge opportunity is. That maybe you love teaching, and sports law teaching is something that you can pick up. And why it helps, number one, of course, you're doing capacity building for students, but it's very important. Academics play a very important role in policy development, and because it's always a mixture of practical insights plus how you craft them academically and put before the public. So that is where academics come in. Great opportunity. It's very exciting. I love sport, watching sport, and whenever I get an opportunity to develop a course, we do it. And in India, I think it's still growing. But if you look at the West, specifically Europe, because we speak to a lot of professors in Europe, they are at the forefront of developing sports policies for countries. I know, and I can give you names like Professor Mark James from the UK, Antoine Duvel from Netherlands. A couple of names that are coming to my head. Professor Ulrich Haas. I think Deep, you had an opportunity to be taught by him in ISDE when you were
I
there.
argued before him. That
You
was
argued before him.
first CAS
Yeah.
hearing.
So imagine, academics reaching, as arbitrators and people who are on the judging panel at Court of Arbitration for Sport. In India, you don't have that kind of trend coming in, but hopefully in the future you will. But being in academics, in sports law academics, can be extremely fulfilling from a student of law perspective and from a career perspective. If you do really well, you might be sitting as a judge in the Court of Arbitration for Sport one day. Ulrich Hartz is a huge example, and I'm pretty sure the number of other professors who've reached there.
Thank you so much, sir, for the insightful answer.
Great.
So I think we have reached the time where I think we have to conclude the session.
Yeah.
So any final or concluding remarks from the eminent guest speakers, Deep sir and Tarun sir? Anything
Thank
which
you.
you
I
would
think
like
that's
to?
what I want to say, to you Ayush, to Just Corps, and most importantly, people who joined us today. It's very overwhelming to see so many people come, one who are at least interested in the area of sports law. The generation that Deep and I come from, I think you wouldn't find a lot of people joining such seminars and webinars, because people did not know about it. We are very glad, as individuals, as Doctrina Ludus, to be a part of such a dialogue and be a part of such a community where people like coming and talking about sports law. So thank you very much. I genuinely mean it. It's very overwhelming. We feel very blessed. that we got this opportunity. I'm really sorry if we missed some questions. I think now after this particular webinar, we'll be in touch. You can always put your questions on our LinkedIn page, take our email IDs, and we can again maybe have this kind of deliberation coming in the future. Deep.
Yeah, no, don't have much to add. Again, thanks a lot to Just Corpus and of course all the attendees. And yeah, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn. You can drop me a message. I think Tarun is also okay with that, and I'll try to respond to your queries as soon as I possibly can. Okay, thanks a lot. It's been a great
Yeah.
session.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. In concluding, I extend my heartful gratitude to you, Tarun sir and Deep sir, for giving your precious time to us and to all the 1K plus viewers, those who have attended live on the YouTube as promised by the team of Just Corpus. And to such an enlightening session, we eagerly anticipate this opportunity to host you in the near future. Thank you.